Lilian, have you got any memories in the World War II?
I've got quite a few actually, and I've written this down in 20 odd years ago when I wrote my an autobiography, and I finished it when I stopped writing when I was 72. But I've actually it takes about 10 minutes to speak.
That's fine.
To read.
That's fine.
Because I timed myself this morning.
Yes, but, well, you carry on. We've got plenty of time, haven't we, everybody? And it's interesting.
Yeah.
Are you okay? Okay, I'll just listen to. Okay, Lilian, you take your time.
I actually began wartime, but I actually was born in 1926. That makes me 91. When I went 91 next month, and we came to live in Wythenshawe from Ancoats when I was 8. So I really am an old, what's known as an old Royal Oaker, before your time. Anyway, let's get back to wartime. I'm only just stating the fact that I'm older than you, that's all. It's called wartime. During the 15 months I spent at H. Pearson's, this was my second little job. My first experience at Manchester at war occurred. It was during the nights of December the 21st and 22nd of 1941, when the German Luftwaffe dropped incendiary bombs on the Manchester Royal Exchange, Jetham School of Music, and other not-so-familiar landmarks. Manchester took a beating in those days. The sound of the bombings reverberated throughout many of the suburbs of the city. At this time, Trafford Park was a large industrial area. This area also received its share of the December bombings. The firm of H. Pearson Limited was situated in Trafford Bar. It too was affected by the bombings. When their employees reported for work following the first night of the bombings, they were sent home. The reason for this was though the firm itself was only slightly damaged, the surrounding streets and houses were more severely damaged. The trams were not running, which meant we got back home under our own steam. I remember walking for an hour or so before I was able to board a tram going towards Baltimore Road, from which I picked up my bus home. There was another area in my young life that the area was affected. The area was my attendance at night school classes, which were being offered at Yew Tree School, now Arden College. My sister Renee and I enrolled for the shorthand and typing classes which were being offered at the school. This meant we went to these classes straight from work. When the raid started, we were shepherded into the cellars of the school. There were times when we did not emerge from the cellars until long past midnight. We had then to walk to Wythenshawe Road to wait for a bus to Royal Oak and home to bed. Sometimes the buses had stopped running during the raids, and this meant a long wait for a bus to appear. Our mother was being very worried about our late homecoming, to say nothing of the lack of our proficiency within our shorthand and typing skills. The so-called learning took place from my 14th to my 16th year. The sound of the German planes was frightening. The retaliatory sound of the anti-aircraft guns was equally frightening. The glow of the fires burning around Manchester could be seen for miles around. Later on in the war, because Battery Sanatorium, part of the Wythenshawe area, had incendiary bombs dropped within its grounds. The War Office ordered that an anti-aircraft battery to be stationed on a field in the Royal Oak area of Wythenshawe, which was at the exact station where all the houses are built now, down Moor Road. My father was a patient at the Sani at this time while serving as a soldier in Gallipoli in the 1914-18 war. He was shot through one of his lungs. When the Home Guard began to take shape in the early 1940s, some of the men, along with some of the youth of the Royal Oak Estate, formed a local Home Guard, then known as LDV, Local District Volunteers. My dad served in the 1914 war because he was an old soldier. He was made the sergeant of the company. He spent a lot of his nights on patrol because of losing a lot of sleep and also getting very, very wet. His injury of the 1914-8 war, a shot lung, he developed tuberculosis and spent 15 months as a patient in the Sani. That's what it was called at the time. It was during his time in the sanatorium that the bombings occurred. Again, my mother must have been very worried that not only did she have to eke out the food rations allowed to her family, it must have been a struggle to provide items of extra food for her sick husband. My mother insisted we must never mention that Dad had TB. We had been given a clean bill of health from Manchester Chest Clinic. We were to say our friends until Dad returned home, and we would say nothing to our friends until Dad returned home fit and well. I can't really remember when I did tell others of his illness. I'm sure that I did after a time when the shame of TB in my home receded. Tuberculosis was a scourge. Before penicillin and other modern medicines were discovered, complete bed rest and fresh air was the only remedy. More sufferers succumbed to death than those who recovered from the illness. Fortunately for my mother, Dad succumbing to TB helped her to dodge the inevitable queue, waiting in line for the food rations which the government allotted to us. This came about because the grocer, the greengrocer and the butcher were in the LDB, and my father being the sergeant in charge. Cream was part of the housewives' contribution to the war effort. When my father's illness occurred for all the 15 months he was in hospital and before he was well enough to return to work, his weekly wage was delivered to our door every Friday evening by another employee of Buenberg Gauge Company. Evidently my father was well thought of by his employers because this was a time when sick employees unable to work received no pay. One early winter evening I was returning home from work later than my usual time. I heard enemy planes overhead. The ack guns began to fire from the field less than 10 minutes from my home. I was terrified and began to run home as quickly as I could. My mother was at the front door watching for me and shouting into the blackout, "Is that you, Lily? Hurry up, hurry up." Needless to say, I was hurrying up.